Yes.
We'll wait for Lisa to get to her chair and start. Matt said he might be a little bit late tonight.
Right. Hello.
Carl, I don't think Matt's gonna make it.
Pardon?
I don't think Matt's gonna make
Package,
it.
you want to share with
Listen, what time did you talk to him?
Talked to him yesterday.
Okay, he's not gonna make it.
Not gonna be here at all.
Yeah.
What?
Sorry, you're stuck with us.
What? Okay. Good.
Right.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll begin the meeting with a moment of silence. And as we do, if we can keep in our thoughts and prayers the brave people of Ukraine. We also ought to keep in our thoughts too, something that's going to be happening down the corridor. The women's basketball team is playing in the second round at 6:30 against Newburyport. So go Panthers. Tonight's meeting, Matt talked to Matt yesterday on the phone, and he thought he might be late today. I understand now he may not be here, so you're stuck with only me. We had a nice talk yesterday though about the objective for this particular meeting. There's been apparently some varying opinions about what this meeting was all about. Matt and I kind of agree what we think the meeting is about. So he wanted to make sure that in his absence I communicated that to you all too. It's simple. It's a joint meeting with the Hanson Board of Selectmen. It came out of a meeting, as I understand it, among Lincoln and Lisa and Randy and Laura. They thought it would be a good idea for the two boards to get together at this time. And that as you see on the agenda, the goal of the meeting is to look at the fiscal year 2023 Whitman Hanson Regional School District budget, and also to at some point pay some attention or keep in mind the long-range regional school district sustainability. And what that really refers to is the notion that using one-time money might force the schools and the towns into a really tough position a couple of years down the road. And it's just a point that I think we want to be able to make. I see the meeting as our giving the schools advice for their certification meeting next week. As the two Board of Selectmen get together, we might be able to let them know what we think we can handle over the next year, over this year, and what might happen in the future. So given that, we'll open it up to the two boards if they have anything they'd like to begin the discussion with. And if I hear nothing, it'll be a very short meeting. Lynn,
as well. I know that sort of an open dialogue here. One thing that's been in the back of my mind the last couple of years is the way the school.
I don't think anybody can.
Oh, sorry.
You gotta speak up.
The way the school's been delivering the budget to the towns the last couple of years has been to wait to the statutory deadline to vote a budget and then present that out to the two towns, and that begins our process of trying to make everything work out. If the whole process could be moved forward a little bit, it would make balancing the town budgets a lot easier on our side. For Whitman at least, I imagine similarly for Hanson. Just something that every year we seem to be sort of in the same cycle, and then the school assesses a budget late, the towns go back and forth, the towns aren't necessarily on the same page, so that's something that we need to work out. But at least on the beginning end of it, if we wait till we get numbers from the schools, it's often mid-March, late March, mid-April, by the time we're all sort of in agreement. One year even up to town meeting. So I don't know.
Okay, I had asked Lincoln yesterday if he and Lisa had been talking about what they foresee as what we can do as far as assessment increase is concerned. Did you guys want to give us some results of your conversations?
Yeah, so I can let Lisa obviously speak from the Hanson perspective. From the Whitman perspective, I know, as everyone in this room knows, since the school committee has not yet certified a budget, we don't know what that figure is. But as far as the original budget that was presented by Superintendent Simonak, that assessment number would require, from my perspective, the use of one-time revenue, in our case, free cash, the certified free cash for the town of Whitman, to fund that assessment number. That picture changes a little bit. With the newest number that was discussed, I'm not sure that's fair to say that's the newest number, but the number that was discussed at the school committee's meeting on February 16th, where there was further discussion about the budget, that assessment number, depending on some other factors, but I know there's continuing to be some discussion internally in the schools about the non-mandated busing line and what impact that might reduce, and then whatever impact that might have in turn to the assessment. But setting that aside, the February 16th projected number, that number would be able to be fit, based on my projections, within the levy for the town of Whitman without the use of one-time revenue. But again, there's certainly some moving pieces there. I think that from my perspective, that was the most important thing in the immediate term. I think there was a pretty clear direction from the Whitman Board of Selectmen. There wasn't a desire to use one-time revenue to balance the budget. I think we're getting there, but as Chairman Kowalski said, I think there's also a consideration about what does the budget look like and how would it be balanced, the school budget and the town's budget, without one-time revenue going forward in fiscal years 25 and beyond. So that's where we're at from the
So just to sort of make what you said as clear as you possibly can, what the schools are asking for now is something that we can handle within our levy.
The most recent number that I've seen in the public school committee meetings, yes, correct.
Lisa?
Well, from the Hanson side, I know when Todd and I were putting the preliminary budget together, we played around with some placeholders, 3.25, 3.5, and then 4. We thought we were safe with a 3.5 assessment that we worked our budget around. And then when we came to the meeting, we saw the 5.76, but they rounded it down to 3.7. From the Hanson side, I think the full day, the tuition-free full-day kindergarten is a huge chunk of money at $740,000. And if I recall, my memory serves, back when this was first being bounced around, it was in the $300,000 to $400,000 range. Now it's $740,000. So that's a huge amount that they're looking for the towns to absorb right off the get-go. Hanson cannot afford that. We all know with COVID, there has been a shortfall of revenue growth. We just don't have it in the budget to absorb a 5.76% assessment. So we're hoping that we can find some ground with the schools to bring their assessment down. So again, so that we don't have to tap into one-time funds to make our budget work. And we don't want to decimate our town departments, which we have just really built up where they need to be, so that we can fund this tuition-free full-day kindergarten and the other programs the schools want to do. We don't want to sacrifice town departments for that.
Okay, is anyone else on the Hanson side want to chime in on that? Okay. So what percentage increase in the assessment do you believe you can handle?
Well, I mean, if there was a 3% increase, a 3% assessment, our town accountant is comfortable with that, with 3%. It would allow us to move forward without decimating our town departments. and without hitting, coming into using one-time funds.
Okay, and what's the percentage, Lincoln, that
So,
we were able to deal with?
I'm sorry, Steve.
What's the percentage that we were able to deal with?
Yes, so the most recent number, it was 3.67% from the
Okay.
schools, and we could deal with that number. So a 3% increase for Hanson because of the assessment formula would be slightly less for Whitman. So we could handle that within
Okay,
our ongoing revenue.
okay, thank you. Anyone on the Whitman side have anything they want to add?
If I can.
Danny?
What is, I'm looking at what you gave us today in there, and you're saying our assessment is up by 3.7?
So the budget you have in front of you, so that does not have the most recent number that was discussed in the most recent school committee meeting?
Okay,
Because it hasn't been certified by the school committee yet.
so it's 3.7, okay. A couple of things. As far, I think it's important that Whitman Hanson does, they don't have to vote on the budget probably as early as we do at South Shore Tech, because we have town meetings at South Shore Tech that are in February and March. So we have to finalize our budget in January. But we wait for the governor's numbers to come out, and 99% of the time, the governor's numbers, I believe, are what the numbers are. So if that's the case, I don't understand why Whitman and Hanson can't, when the governor's numbers come out, take that number for what Whitman and Hanson are getting and apply that to the budget and work with that number and come up with a budget that is end of January, beginning of February. That way, towns know exactly, much earlier than waiting till the very last minute to certify their budget, when towns then have to be in a hurry, like trying to figure out where they're going to get the money to meet that budget if they can. And if they can't, when they go to town meeting, if it gets turned down, that leaves the school empty-handed, and it shouldn't be that way. Both Whitman and Hanson and the Whitman Hanson school systems, or all school systems and the towns of Whitman and Hanson, should be comfortable about what they're paying for education. And I think the sooner we know the numbers, the better. And I don't see why it can't be at the end of January when the governor's numbers come out. That's my opinion.
Okay, anyone else?
I agree with all of what you just said. And I also think something has jumped the tracks in the last couple of years. I know when I first was elected as a selectman, we would get the package that we've got in front of us, we would get it emailed to us from the district, and we would have the superintendent come to a selectmen's meeting with the business manager and just make a case for why the budget was what they were presenting. And I recognize COVID may have complicated that, from happening. I think it still could have happened virtually. But I would like to see us get back on track with an earlier conversation, more documentation, more engagement and partnership with the two boards of selectmen, so that we aren't making, hasty, decisions on the fly. That really isn't a way for us to make budget decisions and make decisions that are going to impact all of our students, all of our departments, and the like. I think to the person, everybody here definitely appreciates the importance of education. It's a huge part of both of our budgets. But we have competing needs that we have to balance, and I think it's disrespectful to our employees to be doing this stuff so last minute. It causes a great deal of anxiety, with the unions and with our employees when they feel so unsettled for such a long period of time, and it's unnecessary. It could be done earlier in the process.
Anyone else? Randy?
For me, it's a more transparent process. If we've learned anything over the last few months of the school budget, It's been active citizens that have notified us and myself, carried through with the circuit breaker issues. We now see a transportation issue that was addressed over a year and a half ago that work is being done on, that you'll see, with better management, you will see a savings to both towns. Many of you know I stood up here a couple weeks ago and called this budget reckless because it is not a 3.4% overall increase. If you look at the amount of money that's being tucked into this budget with one-time funds that were actually dedicated last year that now has somehow changed. Like you said, Laura, the process has jumped the tracks, and I personally don't feel that the towns are, we talk about partnerships. Well, where is the partnership? I think that's what this meeting is, to further the town partnership, but I really don't see a lot of partnership with the school district. Really disheartened again by the transportation issue, which we'll see when that gets addressed again. The way our board was painted at that last meeting as trying to cut transportation to save $1, when we were really just asking for proper management of it. And with the numbers actually being looked into, it's pretty clear to see. This budget is disastrous for the towns. If they're allowed to put this much one-time money in, by their business manager's own accounting, bookkeeping, Excel file, serious deficit in 2025. I know a recent public document from a budget subcommittee meeting that was sent to me seems to change a little bit, but it only changes because the numbers get skewed. That increases from the asks of the town in 2024 now jump greatly. I think our town has set a precedent that, you know, for us to be sustainable, we're at a maximum 5% increase, which isn't possible for, I don't think, either town this year. We've talked sustainability for a long time. We're making strides in Whitman for a sustainable budget. And like you said, Laura, that it shouldn't be our town departments that, you know, start walking on eggshells as we get into April and May, because this burden is within 3 weeks being thrown at us, and how do we handle it? I've stood in this room for 4 or 5 years in a row now and said, this is lunacy that we do the same thing year after year, and it doesn't need to be done like this. Again, if we're talking partnerships, then be a good partner.
I would just add that, you know, so I'm going to take a slightly, you know, different tone. I do appreciate, you know, I appreciate what you're saying, and I agree with it to a degree. But, you know, first off, you know, thank you for meeting with us. Thank you for the school committee for putting this together and everybody doing this, because, you know.
Point of order, Joe.
Yeah.
This is a joint meeting of the Board of Selectmen. The school committee was not invited, they didn't put this together. We're here to observe.
Yeah.
When we talk about partnerships, right, we're here to listen, but we were not included or invited to this conversation.
Yep, I guess my thanks.
Time out.
Point of order.
Chris.
You actually were.
Chris, you were, as was the superintendent,
And the business manager
and as was the business manager. You were invited formally to the meeting, correct? Is that correct?
Excuse me?
You,
So Carl, can I read the email that I sent a couple days ago?
you as the chair of the school committee were invited to this meeting.
By whom?
By whom? By Lincoln, who sent out the invitations,
Did you
correct?
receive an invitation? I didn't receive an invitation. When was it sent?
Lincoln?
We discussed it. We discussed it with Superintendent Simonak.
Discussion.
There was a discussion.
Correct. An email invite was supposed to be sent last Thursday. We have not received that as of yet.
So may I just read the email that I sent both chairs of the selectmen Thursday morning?
Sure, but...
Hold on.
Time out.
I think we ought to recognize Mr.
Yeah,
Leeds here.
yeah,
Let's finish up here.
Yeah, no, I do appreciate it, and I guess what I was gonna say was, you know, I appreciate the ability for everybody here to be able to voice their concerns in a civil way, because we have, you know, 3 major groups coming together, and it's really great to be able to sit in the same room and have these conversations. That's what I was going to say. But in addition to that, you know, I do agree that, you know, what we're looking at are, it's not just the operation in which we present this budget year after year in the timeline that it happens, but we are looking at a massive fiscal issue that even if we solve it this year, it's going to be there next year, and the year after that, and the year after that. And I think it's something that we have to take a hard look at, because it's not sustainable, and the schools deserve to be supported 1,000%, and they deserve to have everything that they want. But it can't be at the expense of the rest of the towns. In addition to that, you know, I just want to make sure that you know, it's something that we can't dip into one-time funds to be able to support, because no budget can be operated that way. It has to be something that's ongoing. It also has to be something that can pass town meeting, because then it becomes an all or nothing issue, and no one on the town operations side or the school budget operations side deserves that. And you know, I just wanted to say, I think everything that you're saying is accurate. I'm just hoping that this is the first start of a new tradition of being able to kind of bring everybody together a lot sooner, a lot quicker, with a lot more transparency, and maybe a little contention will be, you know, gone at that point. So with that, I defer back to you, Chris. Thank you.
Chris, I'm sorry, Chris, could I interject for 1 minute, please?
It's your meeting.
Lisa, did you send an email? Lisa?
There's an email from March 3rd from Chris to Carl and Jeff, and says, I'm just looking to close the loop on the joint meeting. So as of March 3rd, they knew about the meeting.
They knew about the meeting, but were they invited to the meeting to
I did not
participate?
send an invite.
Lincoln, did you send an email inviting the board, the school board?
I had a conversation with Jeff, informing him about it.
Okay.
And if
Mr. Chairman, excuse me, I was under the impression that the school committee was invited to participate in this meeting.
Me too.
They were not. Almost everyone up here has spoke. I was against this meeting. I'm for the premise of this meeting in the future, to figure out upcoming budgets. I understand what's going to happen in 2025, but I'm going to excuse myself from this meeting, because citizens that I represent, whether they're on the school committee or citizens that are sitting here, were not invited to this meeting, so.
Hold on a second. Before you do that, I would ask that you make a motion to adjourn, if that's what you want to do.
I'm not making any kind of motion for anything. I'm just-
So I would like to read this. I would like to read this email into the record,
That's ridiculous.
since it was sent to both chairs and both town administrators.
Sure, be my guest.
Okay. So, and it speaks really to, I think it really goes to where you're going, Joe. I think there is a desire to have a partnership, but partnership requires communication and us coming together, right? And so I reached out to Carl a couple times. I reached out to Matt a couple times. I think there was some confusion around what was the purpose of this meeting. I listened to both selectmen's meeting. I heard in Hanson, we want some more budget information. Okay. I heard in Whitman, hey, we want to give the schools an indicator of what we think they can afford. Okay. Right? All perfectly reasonable things.
Yep.
But I also was concerned that when we had this meeting, that if you're having a public meeting to discuss the school budget, and you don't include the school committee, that becomes really difficult. So basically, the email said, I'm just looking to close the loop on the joint meeting of the 2 boards of selectmen. As you have discussed publicly, the purpose of this meeting is to discuss the school budget as it pertains to the town's plans. That wasn't, again, we weren't included in that conversation. That's what I heard in your public meetings. There have been discussions about the superintendent participating in this meeting. Absolutely, there was conversations about the superintendent participating in the meeting. As I have communicated to both Carl and Matt, the superintendent is not solely responsible for the budget. And as everyone knows, the entire school committee is the group that has the authority to approve the budget. So what I said was Jeff and I will be at the meeting on Tuesday to listen. Based on the agenda, and that this is a meeting between the boards of selectmen, we don't plan on participating in the meeting. And again, not because we didn't want to, just hadn't been asked. We are certainly willing to share and add perspective, but we're not preparing any presentation or prepared to discuss what should or should not be in the budget. We are all for supporting and building partnerships between us, but again, the budget itself falls within the purview of the full school committee. And that was, again, my push of Jeff comes to the meeting, I come to the meeting, I don't have any authority. It's the entire school committee that's in that process. Additionally, based on the fact that the school committee members may choose to attend this meeting, we will be posting the meeting with the sole agenda item of observed meeting of the joint boards of selectmen, which is why we posted it, which is why some folks who decided to show up are here. This was on Thursday morning. We intend to post this first thing Friday. If I have misunderstood or anything here is inconsistent with your expectations, please email me back prior to the close of business today. This will allow us time to make sure that we post. So that was kind of where we left it. Again, I don't want to turn this into a, we're not here to partner. We are. What I would suggest is after this meeting, I'm happy to attend. Whoever wants to attend, we will come to your meetings and we will listen to what you want the budget process to look like. But we need you to, as a group, agree on what it is. It can't be 5 budget presentations and processes over here and 5 over there. If we can come together and understand what that looks like, great. We're working on a 5-year plan. We have never had a 5-year plan in our budget. It is probably in the documents you have, it's publicly available. The reason we're building that 5-year plan is to be able to provide you all a sense of what it's going to look like. The last thing just to add here is I can tell you right now, and this will be super helpful if you guys can provide it to us, the way the state aid works, if we're looking at a 2.5% increase to the school budget, I'm just making this up. I'm not saying we're doing it, just for point of reference. That's roughly going to translate to a 5% assessment to both towns, because the state aid we're going to get is nothing. So I hear what you're saying. We certainly want to partner. We certainly want to support all the other departments, but it is critical to understand that it needs to be somewhat equitable and consistent, right? So I'm not sure you're going to operate town budgets year over year at a 0.5 or 1% increase year over year. So it would be really tough for us to do the same. So hopefully that's good. Again, I don't think we're prepared to have a joint discussion on this tonight. We would be happy to in the future. We have a school committee meeting tomorrow. We plan on at least touching on some of the budget, and we're happy to have the dialogue. But that's kind of where we are today. Thank you for giving us.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Chris, there may have been some miscommunication going on between you and me, because we had a number of conversations over the last couple of weeks to straighten out what this was going to be, and I know you were concerned that it sounded like the Hanson Board of Selectmen wanted to hear a budget presentation from Jeff. That didn't make any sense to me, since you guys have been very public in your budget presentations over the last couple of months, and they're available. Those presentations are available on Zoom. They're available, and there was an opportunity for people to be there, just like there's an opportunity for you, whether you want to say that you were invited or not, to be here, because this is an open meeting. The reason why we're meeting here instead of the original suggestion was to have it at the camp at Camp Kiwanee, is that it can't be televised. We wanted to be able to have this be a true open meeting, and that's why we're here today. And I forgot to, but I wanted to thank Jeff for making that possible for us. So we had conversations about that, and I made it clear to Lincoln that I did not want the superintendent to feel as if he had to make a presentation tonight. He's done it. You're in the process of finalizing it. This was for us to get together to let you know what we might be able to afford. And so far, I think we've done that, which might not meet your expectations, but we've done that. I was really clear with the town administrator of Whitman that Jeff and Mr. Stanbrook and you were to be invited to the meeting. I was also clear, it was also clear to me from your email that you wanted to be here as an observer. You are. So everything is working out just fine. I get it. Anybody from the two boards have anything they'd like to say? Or Lincoln, you had,
I just want to make it clear that early last week, Jeff and I had a specific conversation, and I said I would be sending out an email to the three of them, himself, Mr. Stanbrook, and Mr. Howard, with a formal invitation. Superintendent Simonak asked that I hold off on that formal email until he have a conversation with Chairman Howard. Chairman Howard subsequently sent the email that has now been read saying I will be there with Jeff. So I thought at that point, I hadn't heard back from Superintendent Simonak saying, closing the loop on that. He had asked that I not send that formal invitation until that conversation happened.
I thought.
So I just want to be clear on, when receiving that email back from Chairman Howard, it was clear to me that he would be there and that a once again sort of formal invitation was unnecessary, seeing as how he said he would be there. I just want to be clear on that.
Yeah, my mind is getting fuzzy because it was pretty clear in my mind that before that time, Chris knew that he was invited and that the superintendent and the business manager were invited. That was when we first started talking about this meeting, about a month ago, I think.
So if I may, the question isn't the invitation. The question is the expectation that, as I've said repeatedly now, several times, I said this to you every time we spoke, I said this to Matt every time we spoke, I put it in the email. Whether you invite Jeff or John or Jeff, John, and me, or Jeff, John, Chris, and me, it doesn't matter. We do not have the authority to work with the boards of selectmen on the budget. It's the same reason that I think you're all here tonight. You don't have 2 selectmen from Whitman and 2 selectmen from Hanson. You're all here in the process. So that's the key, and I think that to me is the takeaway. When we go forward, we have 10 people with 10 votes. I don't have, my vote is 1/10. Jeff has no votes, right? So
I think you made it clear.
Right,
We can't sit here and talk about who did this and who went, because it's getting crazy.
We're echoing, yes.
I'd just like to say, I don't think there was ever an expectation that we were going to be negotiating a budget with the full school committee. I never heard anybody on either one of the boards say that. So the notion that it would need to be a 3-party, meeting, I think the reason that Chris and Mr. Stanbrook and Mr. Simonak were invited was merely if we had questions, we could ask the questions. But there was never any notion that we'd be asking you guys on the spot to negotiate some budget thing. That wasn't ever a concept.
Right.
So it was unnecessary to have a full school committee, there. You guys do your thing like you'll do tomorrow night and like you've done in the past, where perhaps if you hear something here, you might bring it back. If there was a concern, you might bring it back. But certainly we wouldn't have expected you unilaterally to take any action.
Well said. Yes, Chris.
Yeah, Chris Scriven, Vice Chair, School Committee. So we talked about partnerships, and let me back up a second. This process absolutely could be improved, okay? There's no question about it, that we could work together to start this process earlier, okay? With more transparency and communication. But if you're talking about a partnership, what's a partnership look like in this situation? We have Whitman, we have Hanson, and we have the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District, right? That's the partnership we have, right? That's the point. If anything's going to be discussed about the budget between the two, your two bodies, the third body should be here too. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Well, and you are.
Can I?
And you are here. Thank you.
Can I say something? Back a long time ago, I've been a selectman over 20 years plus, what we used to do is, we used to have a meeting with like a member, either with the finance committee and maybe a member of the board of selectmen, used to go to a school committee meeting. And the chair of the school committee used to ask the chair of the finance committee, which I don't know if I was on the chair of the finance committee or chair of the school selectmen at the time, exactly what we thought that our town could afford monetarily towards the Whitman-Hanson school budget. It was asked of both towns, so that the regional school system has a goal to reach. These were years ago. Now, I don't understand why it's that difficult to have a number that you could present to the town, and you may not have to vote it, but a number that you could present to the town of what you may need to run the Whitman-Hanson Regional School System. Why it can't be done and presented a lot earlier than it is done today. I can remember the old days, we used, on a Saturday, remember, Carl? We used to sit at the high school, one of the rooms.
I don't remember anything.
Like that, you know? And we'd be there 3-4 hours, and we'd go over the whole budget. This is the school committee, and some of the representative from the boards of selectmen and the finance committee. I know that it's a very large budget. There's a lot of things that have to come together. But I also know that reading what I'm watching you online, on YouTube and things like that, you've had some hurdles that you had to go over this year for the last couple of years. You know, especially when we changed the system, your budgeting system to go to the statutory method and that issue, and then you had a new finance director, and they come up with some different issues, and you're looking into that. So you had a lot of hurdles to come in and go over. But numbers are numbers. And I think that if the process for the school department started earlier, I don't care if they started yesterday to do 2024. The fact is, start with the numbers and what you think you're going to need. And then wait for the governor's budget. And if the budget is a little more than you were expecting, then you can go for some of the wants too. But I think the process has to be so that if the towns know up front exactly what you need to run this regional school system, and then we know what we have. And if we don't have it, and we can't give you what you're looking for, to turn around and say, okay, we'll dig into some funds, one-time funding to maybe get a process, something that we need, is wrong approach. You know, if you have an electric bill, you don't take it out of your savings account to pay for it. You get a second job or hire money somehow. So what I'm saying is you gotta be financially smart and know exactly where the money is and where you can get it on a regular basis and not use your savings account, because that's for emergencies, you know. But I think the process needs to be started earlier, so both towns know exactly what you're looking for, so that we can look at what we could give you, let you know earlier, and not all of a sudden, you know, April, oh my God, you know, we're going to be $400,000 short, you know, $300,000 from Whitman and $100,000 from Hanson or whatever the system is. How are we going to make up that money? Because basically, you remember, Carl, we had that situation where we couldn't afford it, and we ended up cutting the heck out of our budget. Remember that meeting that we had? Like the police and fire and all the town employees cut their budget to the bone to give you what you needed. That being said, that shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen on our side, and it shouldn't happen on your side. We need to know a lot earlier so we can come to an agreement way before town meeting. That's it. Financial planning, it's that simple.
Jeff, this is,
Mr. Chair, so just a
this
point
is
of
kind of an
clarification.
interesting meeting to watch from up here, because what I see is a meeting between, it's been advertised, a meeting between the two boards of selectmen, but everybody's talking to the school committee. So it's almost as if we're having that meeting anyway, Chris, whether we wanted to have it or not.
Mr. Chairman,
So don't ever believe anything I say again, I guess. I did my best.
So thank you
Jeff,
for recognizing me.
Mr. Chairman,
I just said,
point of order, all right?
point of order?
Yes.
Jeff was up there first.
I've had my hand up before Jeff stood up. Am I recognized?
Sure.
As of
I was
clarity.
listening to Dan, so I didn't see your hand. Jeff,
The chair of the school committee spoke to myself and also a Hanson selectman. I made it a point they knew they were invited. The chair, the superintendent, and the business manager. Now, I go back to, I completely disagree with the comment that the whole school committee has to be here to discuss a budget. I made it very clear that I wanted the superintendent here because I don't think there's anything wrong with, if we had questions to answer, I'd be able to ask questions about the budget he presented. I sat in numerous years on the Finance Committee, and I never saw the whole school committee come to the Whitman Finance Committee when we actually did negotiate the budget. So we're not setting precedent here to have a department head go over a budget he presented to the people that are funding it. I don't see, it seemed like that was an issue right from the get-go. And I know I made that, in our discussion, Chris made that pretty clear, that I thought the superintendent should be here to answer any questions we may have on the budget he presented. Not negotiations, not trying to barter down, but if we had questions regarding how many new positions are in this budget, like, you don't think a department head should be able to answer that?
So can I respond to something?
Yeah, through the chair, Randy, not directly to him.
Through the chair.
Thank you.
Generic questions on a
And
presented
Jeff can
budget.
go over there.
You vote, but you have the hard job here. So, Randy, I think the point is, and what I heard is, and you're kind of making my point. This is what I want, this is what I think, this is what I think. My point is, both boards of selectmen need to come together and identify what the process is. The law is explicitly clear. The school committee sets the assessment, that's what they do. They vote the budget, that's what they do, right? So when we talk about partnership, it can't just be, this is what Chris wants, this is what Randy wants, this is what, it doesn't matter. The point is, we have to come together with a collective process that we all buy into and that we all agree to. It's extremely difficult when we're sitting here, even tonight, and someone says, for example, I don't think full day K should be part of the budget. That is a direct responsibility of the school. So to say that they shouldn't come to the meeting and listen or participate and understand, it creates this huge problem. So we can either come together, perhaps all have a conversation together with the party that's responsible, because it is not a department. It is not. It is an entity, and it has a governing body, and that governing body has certain authority that's very clear cut under Mass General laws. It's clear. It is explicit. So I understand the point. Would it be easier for 3 people to get in a room and hash this out? Absolutely. Would that be transparent? No. Is that what we're all equally represented to do? No. So I mean, we can go back and forth on this, but we're really doing exactly what I said we shouldn't do. This is not a joint seat.
Chris, we've gone back and forth
Right.
a couple of times, I think.
Through the chair.
No, wait a second. Jeff is
Well,
waiting.
I want to respond to Mr. Howard.
Let Jeff talk first, and then you can respond to me.
But how can we talk about not funding full day K when we don't know and can't ask a question of what's the actual cost of that?
I don't have a gavel. Jeff.
So I just wanted to go back, I think Laura said it and Dan said it. So back when I got here back in 2010 as a principal, we met in the PAC with the FinComs, the boards of selectmen on a Saturday for 3 hours and went back and forth with the budget. 2011, we did the same thing. And it fizzled out because half the people didn't show up. So Ruth at that point said, let's do it, bring it back to a school committee night, have an open meeting, just like we did on February 2nd, Dan.
Yeah.
So right after the governor's budget came out, we did it as soon as we could. Kind of trying to plan a budget without the governors is a challenge, because that's the message I got back 4 years ago. So in the 4 years I've been doing the budget, I met with Frank and Mike the first year, and Todd and Ken in the Whitman FinCom room there to talk about numbers. I met with John and Lincoln last year upstairs to talk about some numbers. Again, my folks get a little bit uneasy because I'm meeting about numbers without them. I can do, and I want to be able to, and we didn't do that this year at all. Whatever process works for everyone, we'll give up a Saturday. If that's the process that makes it clean and transparent and has both FinComs there, because the other thing is, every year I've been invited to the FinCom meeting in Whitman. One year it was December, this year it's March. I really don't know why it's March 15th, the day before I'm supposed to certify the budget, but I didn't set that invitation. So I've gone every year, and 3 years ago, it was in December prior to us doing the budget, but they said, what are your numbers like? We start doing our numbers in October, really when we get our enrollment numbers, and then the governor's piece is the foundation enrollment that really sets our tone. But if we need to, if both boards, 3 boards decide we want to have a joint meeting on a Saturday to hash out what can be afforded, absolutely. My only challenge too is I don't know what Whitman or Hanson can afford because nobody's given me those numbers either. So when I say it works both ways as a partnership, send me something so I have an idea. The boast I have is going off of what Randy said is the top number is a 5% increase of the assessment. That's the number that I've heard, and I know it can go down. I got that, but that's the only number that I've been given as the superintendent to plan the budget. So I don't know what Hanson has, I don't know what Whitman has, I don't know the plans, and we can absolutely do that up front. Because what I don't want to do is do a meeting for Whitman FinCom, a meeting for Hanson FinCom, a meeting for Whitman Selectmen, and you know our budget goes every week. And in the past, what we've always done is we've put together a budget on the first day, and again, being here 12 years, it seems like every budget meeting we've lowered the assessment until the final, we set it, and then we've lowered it even up till town meeting. So the school budget has gone from here, from a want list or a wish list, down all the way through. So we tried to put together the best possible budget we could, using some one-time funds that, again, the committee's got to make some tough choices, and then sending it to the towns. But from my office, I have a solid office now financially. We have a good structure. I will present as many times, I don't want to say as many, but if we need to have a joint meeting like this, I'm all for it. But I don't want to get pigeonholed that somebody didn't know about it or whatever. But we can do it in the pack, we can do it whatever, go back to the future, it worked, but then I need a commitment from both communities to send representation so that somebody who misses it because it's a Saturday, and we tried to do a Saturday because not everybody can get out of work and on a Wednesday or Tuesday, whatever, but we will be as amenable as possible. When I say we, I'm not speaking for my committee, but I'm saying for myself and John, my assistant superintendent, my director of special education, we will present that budget, even if it's after a school committee, whatever we need to do to make this work, because I don't want to be up here, again, 3 weeks before the assessment time, doing this. That's not beneficial for my kids, and that's who I represent. I know you represent the town, I represent the 3,500 kids that are in the district right now, trying to put together the best thing for them. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jeff.
I just have a quick thing to say, really quick. I've been waiting for a long time. So this is what I would say.
Ladies first.
You know, I appreciate, again, what everybody's doing. I think from my perspective, we've spent a substantial amount of time trying to figure out what email was sent and when and how this meeting is being taken place. So I just want to say, I'd like to have a process either outlined now so we can move on from the emails conversation so we can get to whatever conversation we're supposed to be having right now, or we adjourn and actually set up another meeting and do it the way where it's a little bit clearer so we're not spending 48 minutes talking about how we're going to start this meeting.
I agree.
We have to move forward.
Well said. Yes.
Look, I think everybody here is well-intentioned, okay? All public, servants, all, trying to represent our constituents, and I think that's important to remember. Passions ride high because we may have at times somewhat competing, not entirely, but, some competing priorities. I agree, Joe. I think that the best this year, I think, look, it's jumped the track, and I don't think we can get it on the track this year the way that we should. But I don't want to be talking about this again next year like we have for the last 2 years, saying it's jumped the track. Why don't we start this sooner? So we need to document some type of a process. I would be more than willing to volunteer from the board, the Hanson board. We can even talk at our next meeting. Maybe get a representation from the Whitman board and somebody from the school committee to talk about best practice going forward, what that looks like, maybe a timeline of when we would like to have each of the deliverables, knowing that some of these things will ebb and flow because, it depends on when we get the information, but just to have a conceptual framework that we can agree upon. This is what it should look like. This is what everybody's role is going to be like. Here's the time frame and that type of thing. And then I think, there's no need for anybody to saber rattle or anybody to get upset because we've all agreed on what the process is, and we will hold each other mutually accountable for that process. And I think as far as tonight is concerned, I think the school committee has heard from the towns where we're at. I think that was really our particular goal, you know, and so, you know, it may not have gone exactly the way that, you know, some might have envisioned it going, but, you know, I think there's been some good, healthy dialogue, and again, I just want to acknowledge that I know everybody's doing the best that they can at this time, and that we're trying to work together, and I think we all have acknowledged we could do better. All of us could do better, each of the boards and the school committee, and so let's do better and commit to that and get something in writing.
Very good, very good. I think except for the long conversations about emails and things like that going back and forth, I think we have accomplished something tonight as far as what the schools can expect the towns to be able to afford. And you still have some time to work on your budget and see what happens. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I agree that with this push to start things early, because as Jeff said, there's information that he doesn't have until late in the system, until the governor comes out with his projections. So I'm not sure that there's a mistake made on the part of the school department or the school committee in starting when they start. They've been extremely open at their meetings, and they've had long discussions at their meetings. Anybody that wanted to could see them and respond to them, and some citizens have responded. John Galvin, for example, took what Mr. Stanbrook said and made some really cogent, I think, suggestions, or some cogent warnings. And it's a warning that part of today's meeting was just to make sure that we all understand what that warning means. What it really means is that at some point in time, in order for us to have the school system that we want and the towns that we want, there's going to have to be a request for some sort of an override. That has to happen. We've put it off long enough. It has to happen. Now, what's become clear to me is that request needs to come probably from the school committee. The school committee, in looking at what they would like to accomplish, has to realize that without some sort of a change in the taxation in each of the towns, it's not going to be able to be afforded. It's not going to be able to be sustainable. It's our responsibility to ask for one, but to be requested by the school committee to us for something down the line makes a lot of sense to me. It makes a lot of sense, and that's when we're a partnership, and that's when we're working together. When we can do things that are difficult to do, but in the right order. In the right order. Citizen Kane, you wanted to say something?
Sean Kane, just 31 Forest Street. I'm not on one of the three boards, so as just a member of the public that's been trying to pay attention. Probably the most important thing that I've heard tonight, just myself personally, is when Mr. Howard mentioned the 5-year plan that they've been working on. If you haven't kind of read about it or looked at it, I think it's excellent. When you're talking about the budget and sustainability, for them to put together a long list of assumptions that everybody can clearly see, and then look out over time, how is it going to affect us not just this year, but the next 4 years, that's really valuable when you're thinking about sustainability. You know, and it's very difficult, obviously, that there's been a lot of tension for them to, you know, just because I've gone to a couple of the budget subcommittee meetings, to work through this stuff is obviously difficult because you're trying to predict out what about hold harmless? What about declining enrollment? What about, you know, all of the major factors that would affect the budget over time? With the regional school district, especially ours where it's a unique budget, it's difficult to put all those moving pieces into one plan, but that's what they're trying to do. So I've been really impressed by the work that's been done with the 5-year plan. What I would say is we talked about the difficulty with the budget cycles over the last couple of years, or the last indefinitely that I remember, where the three sides kind of keep their cards close to each other and then all kind of wait till the last moment to see what's going to happen. You know, this is the opposite of that. If the school then is laying all their cards on the table for the next 5 years, it would be very helpful for both towns to do the same. To also go through the hard process of what are the assumptions we need to make, and thinking about departmentally, what are the growth or limitations in each department, and how do we project that out over time? And then if we had that from all three partners, then you can see how that then would make sense, how you could really be more proactive, to Mr. Salvucci's point. Otherwise, how can you do that? You know, if all three partners had the 5 years laid out with assumptions that everybody can read, then you can have a more productive discussion about this year, and you already kind of know what's going to happen, or at least predict what's going to happen the next couple of years. So that seems to be like the logistical work that that seems necessary. One more layer, just to speak to the override. Sorry if I'm running a little bit long, but it may be
Okay,
that
no one else was sorry that they were running long. It's okay.
it may be that when you do that, there might be citizens that are looking at that budget and saying, okay, you just laid out a 5-year sustainable budget, but there might be people who look at that budget and say, yeah, but it doesn't include full day K. And if it doesn't, and that might be the hard truth that they need to swallow, that budget doesn't include full day K, but it's sustainable, right? And then the hard decision would be, well, maybe we should have a survey and figure out, well, do people want to pay a little bit more for full day K or not? And then you lay it out to the people to decide, and they can see all the assumptions. You know, that feels to me like a more intelligent way to do this, a proactive and intelligent way to do this, instead of kind of like holding your cards close, waiting until the last minute, you know, trying to work in, and then maybe an override or maybe not, and we're not quite sure, you know, like what the people would support. But just some thoughts.
Thank you, Sean. Anyone else have anything they would like to say?
If I could, Cal.
Sure, Chris.
So I'll go back to the partnership thing. And the notion that an email is trivial and, you know, we're spending too much, you know, I get what you're saying, because I'd rather not be talking about emails too. But what the point I'm trying to make is, give me another partnership where 2 of the 3 partners sit down at the table to talk, and the third partner is invited as a body to sit down at the table with them, where that's acceptable. We seem to be having a disconnect on the notion of us being a partnership.
Yeah.
And I've heard little jokes here and there about it, and I'm sitting over here going, wait a minute, I'm not sure they understand. This is a partnership. It's not like Carl and Matt and, you know, Chris and whoever. It's your bodies are here, our body should be here. I don't understand what the disconnect is. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll actually respond to that, because
What's that?
I said I'll actually respond to that, because my point is, through the chair.
It's all right, go ahead.
No, that's appropriate. I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't want to be taken out of context. I actually agree with you. I agree. So for me, I focus on the process. You know, I'm curious what it is that we're trying to get out of here. I think, Laura, you did a great job of trying to articulate where we move on from here. I guess my point is that I think we have to clean it up. I mean, the email piece was an anecdote for, we have to clean it up, because this conversation is going to trickle into town meeting, and it's not going anywhere. And we're going to spend a significant amount of time talking about something that is absolutely important, but we're still talking about substantial monies to taxpayers that are going to get overlooked at the expense of something that's important, but, you know, not tailored to the tax dollars. So I agree. That's why I'm saying, I mean, we either have to, you know, really kind of write down and formalize what we're talking about and kind of move on from there, or we have to adjourn and then invite them formally, so we're not spending time talking about this, because it is important. So we can actually have the conversation, because right now I'm feeling like it's getting derailed, and I'm not sure that we're getting much out of this other than what we need to do moving forward. And I don't want to do it in a way where someone else gets up and storms out, because although it gets claps, it is not something that now this person's part of the conversation, and we have to go back and try and figure this out. And it doesn't actually speak to any respect for anybody in this room, simply because you all have a voice, and you all deserve to be heard. So getting up, walking out isn't helping anything. What I want to know is, how do we bridge these relationships, bridge this, without it getting derailed? I think that there's a lot of opportunity for us to move forward. I don't know what the answer is, so it's really through you, Mr. Chair, respectfully. I don't know what the emails went back and forth with our chair, so I can't speak to any of that. I just want something to come out where we're all leaving with some action items, we're all feeling like we have some movement, and we're not shutting down or burning bridges, rather we're building them. So it has nothing to do with trying to minimize that. I want that to be known.
I think as this meeting is concluding, I think some of our objectives were met. And it may have been a mistake to set up a meeting just between the two Board of Selectmen. But I think what we need to work on then is a process for next year, and not for this year's budget. You all have an idea of what we think we can afford right now. You heard it from both Lincoln and you heard it from Lisa. We obviously have an idea what you would like to do, because we've been watching very detailed budget presentations at school committee meetings, and we know what your responsibility is. I'm pretty clear on what the responsibility is at the school committee too. I used to be one. I used to be on a school committee, and I had only one goal, and that was to get the most money I could out of a town that didn't want to pay it. And sometimes it worked. Sometimes all you needed to do was to pack a town meeting, and there it goes. And that's what we did sometimes. Sometimes we won, sometimes we didn't. But my sympathies are always with making sure that the children in this town get the best education that they have. I don't think we're going to, this three-way partnership, which is kind of an interesting little partnership, I'm not sure that we're going to have a solution to that right now. I think it's going to make some sense after this budget season to have a group, and I hate to set up like subcommittees to do things, because you send things to committees to die. I think we need to figure out a way to go through next year with the three of us somehow coming together more often as groups, not as just listening to presentations on budgets, but as a group to see where we want to go as a town. We had a good long-range planning meeting in Whitman a while ago, in which we came together and came up with a look at what the town wanted to look like over the next 5 years. And when I came in tonight, Fred reminded me that in the long-range plan that he was reading, there was nothing in there about a new Whitman Middle School. How could that get by us when we spent the whole day together going over 5-year plans? And there were representatives from the schools there as well as all the other departments in town. So we have a lot of work to do, but I think the work is going to take some. It's going to take some setting up, probably after town meeting season is over, to make sure that next year things can happen more smoothly. I think it's a dream to ask for the schools to give us information earlier than they get it. I don't think that makes any sense at all. But we can work on that. Yeah, Laura.
So I think I really liked what Mr. Kane had to say about taking and sort of layering the strategic plans on top of one another to kind of contrast and compare, right? Because it doesn't have to be a sudden surprise every year. Oh my gosh, this is like if we're all planning, then yes, there's going to be unanticipated circumstances that come up, obviously, and we're going to have to be resilient and respond to those. But in general, if we are able to, each have those plans and compare them as true partners, and again, not hold those cards so close to the vest, and say, look, this is a true partnership. We acknowledge that we want our children to have a good education. We're not going to bankrupt the towns necessarily to do that. We've got to balance things. But, and then I think if we have that piece, and then if we can get a process we agree upon, and whether it's super early in the process or just who who the stakeholders are and what their roles are. I think that, that would be helpful. And I don't want to force the school committee into saying, you must have the numbers to us by January 30th. It needs to be something that, as a partner, they're going to feel comfortable with. We feel like by middle of February, we could give you an early warning sign of where things are going, that type of thing, and work that into the process. So I think that there's a lot of work to be done by all three partners, and I think, as abysmal at points during this meeting as it might have been, I think that what I am hearing is a willingness to partner and a willingness to work on a process. So that gives me hope.
Okay. Good, hope. Anyone else? Well, I think a motion to adjourn would probably be in order.
Second.
Okay. Oh, I can't make it.
So moved.
So moved, second. Is there any discussion of that?
All in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Well,
Thank you.